They say a man can lose everything in a single night. I'm here to tell you they're right. My name is Ezekiel Stone, and before I became the ghost that haunts the nightmares of every outlaw from Montana to Mexico, I was just a tracker. A damn good one, but just a tracker. I could find water in the desert, read a 3-day-old trail like it was written in fresh ink, and track a man across solid rock if I had to. The army hired me, the railroads hired me. Even the Pinkertons came calling once or twice, but I never took blood money. Never tracked a man for bounty. I had principles back then. I had a life back then. That was before the Crimson Dozen rode into my world and painted it red. It was September of 1876, 3 months after Custer fell at Little Bighorn. I lived in a place called Redemption Valley, a little settlement nestled in the Colorado Rockies, where the pine trees grew so thick you could barely see the sky. My wife Sarah, she ran a schoolhouse there. My boy Thomas, he was 7 years old with his mother's green eyes and a smile that could melt snow in January. My daughter Emma just turned 5 the week before. She'd been begging me to teach her how to track rabbits. I was supposed to teach her that weekend. Instead, I buried her. I'd been up in the high country for 3 days, tracking a mountain lion that had been killing livestock. When I came back down the mountain trail that Friday evening, I smelled the smoke before I saw it. By the time I reached the valley, the sun was setting, turning the smoke clouds blood red against the darkening sky. The whole settlement was burning. Every building, every home, every dream. They'd come at noon, 12 riders dressed in long coats the color of dried blood. The survivors would later tell me they rode in like they owned the place, like they owned the whole damn world. Their leader was a man named Darius Blackwood, and he wore a hat made from the skin of a black wolf. They didn't ask for money. They didn't make demands. They just started killing. I found Sarah in the schoolhouse, or what was left of it. She'd tried to protect the children, all 15 of them. The survivors said she stood in the doorway with a rifle, told those monsters they'd have to go through her first. So they did. They shot her down, and then they burned the building with the children still inside. My children, 15 innocents, gone. But Sarah had managed to hit one of them before she fell, a man they called Grinning Jack Holloway. She put a bullet in his shoulder, made him scream. And when men like that scream, they remember hard. That's why they left a message. Carved into the door of my cabin, which they'd left standing for this exact purpose, were 12 names. 12 members of what folks called the Crimson Dozen, the most vicious gang of killers the West had ever seen. And beneath the names, a message in Blackwood's own hand. We are the storm that breaks everything. Try to find us, tracker. We'll be waiting. I spent that whole night sitting in front of that door, reading those names over and over by lamplight while Redemption Valley smoldered around me. I didn't cry. Couldn't. It was like something inside me had been burned away along with everything else. But I made a promise in the cold light of dawn. 12 names, 12 graves. I would become the storm that broke them. The names burned into my memory like brands. Darius Blackwood, the leader. Grinning Jack Holloway, the one Sarah wounded. Rattlesnake, Ruth Malone, a woman deadlier than any man. Doc Silas Crane, who'd studied medicine before he started using his knowledge to make people suffer. The deacon, Isaiah Cross, who quoted scripture while he killed. Brothers Mad Dog and Rabid Pete Carver. Silent Tom Waters, who hadn't spoken a word in 10 years but let his guns do all the talking. Scorpion Santiago Reyes. The Undertaker Josiah Grimm. Widowmaker Will Stokes. And the artist, they said he was called that because he liked to arrange his victims in poses, like some kind of sick painting. 12 devils in human skin, and I was going to send every single one of them to hell. It took me 2 weeks to pick up their trail. They'd scattered after Redemption Valley, smart enough to know that 12 riders together drew too much attention. But they weren't smart enough. Nobody is, not when I'm tracking them. I found cigarette butts with a particular Turkish tobacco that only Grinning Jack Holloway smoked, found them leading south toward the New Mexico territory. Jack was a talker, always had been. That was his weakness. A man who can't keep his mouth shut leaves a trail of stories, and stories are easier to follow than footprints. I heard about him in a saloon in Santa Fe, then in a brothel in Las Cruces, then in a poker game in Mesilla. He was heading for the border. Probably figured he'd lie low in Mexico until things cooled down. I caught up to him in a little cantina in a town so small it didn't even have a name. Just Kilometro 47 on the railroad markers. He was sitting with his back to the wall like he thought he was being careful, like he thought nobody would find him. He was wrong. I walked in at noon when the sun was high and hot and every smart person was taking their siesta. There were maybe 5 other people in the place, all of them suddenly very interested in their drinks when they saw the look on my face. "Jack Holloway," I said. My voice sounded strange to me, like it belonged to someone else, someone colder. He looked up and for a second he didn't recognize me. Then his face went pale under his sunburn. "Stone? Ezekiel Stone? How did you—" "My wife put a bullet in you at Redemption Valley," I said, cutting him off. "That was her last act on this earth. I'm here to finish what she started." He went for his gun. He was fast, I'll give him that. But I'd been practicing. Every night since the massacre, I'd practiced my draw until my hands bled, until the motion was faster than thought itself. My bullet took him in the chest before his gun cleared leather. He fell back, that grin finally wiped off his face. As he lay dying, I knelt beside him. "Where are the others?" I asked. He coughed blood. "Go to hell, tracker. I'm already there," I told him, "and I'm taking all of you with me." I buried him in the desert, no marker, no ceremony, just a shallow grave in the wind. One name crossed off my list, 11 to go. Word travels fast in the West, faster than any horse. Within a month, every outlaw from California to Texas knew that Ezekiel Stone was hunting the Crimson Dozen. Some laughed, some called me a fool, but the smart ones, they started looking over their shoulders. I picked up the trail of 2 more in Arizona territory. Widowmaker, Will Stokes, and the Deacon Isaiah Cross were traveling together, which made sense. They'd been partners for years, ever since they met in a prison chain gang in Louisiana. The Deacon would quote Bible verses while the Widowmaker did the killing. A match made in hell. I tracked them to the mining town of Copper Creek, where they'd been hired as security by a corrupt mine owner who needed men willing to beat and kill workers who complained about conditions. It was the kind of work that suited them perfectly. I found them in the mine owner's mansion on a Sunday morning, fitting since the Deacon always liked to do his worst work on the Lord's Day. They were eating breakfast in a dining room that probably cost more than every home in Redemption Valley combined. I didn't announce myself this time, didn't give them a chance. I walked in through the kitchen, past the terrified cook who took one look at me and fled. The Widowmaker heard my footsteps and turned, his hand moving to his gun. I put 2 bullets in him before he could stand. He fell across the table, scattering eggs and bacon. The Deacon moved faster than I expected for a man his age. He'd grabbed a Bible from the table and held it in front of his chest like a shield. "The Lord is my shepherd," he started to recite. "The Lord ain't here," I said, and shot him through his Bible. The bullet went through the good book and into his black heart. He looked down at the hole, blood spreading across the pages of Psalms, and said, "Forgive me, Father," before he collapsed. "No," I said to his corpse, "no forgiveness. Not for you, not for any of you. I left them where they fell. Let the corrupt mine owner explain the bodies to the sheriff. 3 down, 9 to go. Mad Dog and Rabid, Pete Carver were the youngest of the Crimson Dozen, barely in their 20s, but they'd already killed more men than most soldiers see in a war. They grew up in the slums of St. Louis, raised by a father who beat them and a mother who drank herself to death before they turned 10. The West was full of sad stories like theirs. But somewhere along the way, they'd stopped being victims and became something worse, something that enjoyed the suffering of others. I found them in Kansas, in a town called Salvation Creek. They were holed up in a farmhouse they'd taken from a family, keeping the farmer's wife and daughter as hostages. The sheriff was too scared to move against them. The townspeople were too scared to help. That was the Carver's way. Find a place where people were afraid, and feed on that fear like wolves on a carcass. I watched the farmhouse for 2 days, learning their patterns. Mad Dog was the planner, careful and calculating. Rabid Pete was the wild one, unpredictable and violent. They'd take turns sleeping, always keeping one on watch. Professional paranoid, which made sense when half the law west of the Mississippi wanted them dead. On the third night, I set fire to their barn. Not to kill them, but to draw them out. When Mad Dog came running out to check on the noise, I was waiting in the shadows. I hit him with the butt of my rifle, dropped him like a sack of grain. Rabid Pete heard the commotion and came charging out, guns blazing, screaming like his namesake. But rage makes you stupid. He couldn't see me in the darkness and the smoke. I shot him 3 times before he even knew where I was. Mad Dog woke up tied to a chair in that farmhouse, his brother's body at his feet. The hostages were gone. I'd sent them to safety in town. It was just him and me. "You killed my brother," he said, tears streaming down his face. "You killed 15 children," I replied. "You don't get to cry about justice." "We didn't know they were in there," he said. "Blackwood gave the order. You just followed orders?" I cut him off. That's what evil men always say. I left him with a choice. He could tell me where to find the others, or he could die slow. He talked, gave me everything I needed to know about the Dozens network, their contacts, their hiding places. When he was done, I kept my word. I gave him a quick death, more mercy than he deserved. 5 down, 7 to go. And now I knew where to look. Rattlesnake. Ruth Malone was the most dangerous member of the Crimson Dozen, and that's saying something. She'd been a trick shooter in a traveling show before she turned to killing for money. Could hit a man in the eye from 50 yards. Could put 6 bullets in 6 targets faster than most men could draw. She was beautiful too, which made her even more dangerous. Men underestimated her right up until the moment she killed them. According to what Mad Dog told me, Ruth was in Texas, running a gambling operation in a town called Devil's Fork. She'd gone semi-legitimate, or as legitimate as someone like her could get, but I knew better. People like Ruth Malone don't change. They just find new ways to be poison. I found her in the biggest saloon in Devil's Fork, dealing cards at a private poker game. She was dressed in red velvet, her dark hair pinned up, a smile on her face that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. When I walked in, that smile froze. She knew who I was. She'd been expecting me. "Gentlemen," she said to the players at her table, "I'm afraid we'll have to continue this game another time. I have business to attend to." The men looked at me, looked at her, and wisely decided to leave. When the room was empty, Ruth poured herself a whiskey and pushed a glass across the table to me. "You've made quite a name for yourself, Mr. Stone," she said. 5 of us dead in 3 months. Impressive." "I'm not here to drink with you," I said. "No, I don't suppose you are." She sipped her whiskey, studying me. "You want to know if I feel guilty about Redemption Valley? The answer is no. I don't feel much of anything, to be honest. Never have. It's what makes me good at what I do." "My wife felt things," I said. "My children felt things. That schoolhouse was full of people who felt things. You took that from them. And now you're taking from us," she said. "Fair enough. But before you kill me, you should know. This won't bring them back. You know that, right? You can kill all 12 of us and they'll still be dead. You'll still be alone." "I know," I said, "but you won't be alive to hurt anyone else." She went for her gun then, fast as lightning, just like they said she was. She got off 2 shots before I got off 1. She missed. I didn't. The rattlesnake finally met her match. 6 down, 6 to go, halfway there. The artist was a man named Marcus Finch, though he'd dropped his last name years ago. Before he became a killer, he'd actually been a painter in Philadelphia, studied at fancy academies and everything. But something was broken in his head, something that made him see death as beauty and suffering as art. The poses he arranged his victims in were his sick masterpieces, and he signed each one with a small painted scorpion in the corner, his calling card. Santiago Scorpion Reyes was different. He killed for money, pure and simple. He was a professional, taking contracts from anyone who could pay. He'd earned his nickname in the Mexican Revolution, where he'd been an assassin for both sides, depending on who paid more. He and the artist made an odd pair, but according to the information I'd gathered, they'd been working together since Redemption Valley. I found them in New Mexico, in the ruins of an old Spanish mission. They'd been using it as a base for robbing stagecoaches on the road between Santa Fe and Albuquerque. The law couldn't touch them because the mission was on disputed territory, claimed by both Mexico and the United States. It was a perfect hideout for men with enemies on both sides of the border. I approached the mission at night, moving through the desert like a shadow. The moon was new, just a sliver in the sky, which suited me fine. Darkness was my friend now. I'd learned to move through it like I was part of it. The artist was in what used to be the chapel, painting by candlelight. He'd set up an easel and was working on a canvas, his back to the door. Scorpion was outside, standing watch on the mission wall. Professional, like I'd expected. I took Scorpion first. One shot, silenced by the distance and the night wind. He fell from the wall without a sound. The artist never heard it. He just kept painting, humming some tune I didn't recognize. I walked into the chapel, my boots echoing on the stone floor. He turned, brush still in his hand, and smiled when he saw me. "Ezekiel Stone," he said. "I've been hoping you'd come. I wanted to paint you." "You're done painting," I said. He looked at me sadly like I was a child who didn't understand something important. "You don't appreciate what I do you? I create beauty from chaos. I give meaning to death. You killed children," I said. "There's no meaning in that. There's no beauty in that." "Ah, but there is," he said, setting down his brush. "There's beauty in everything, Mr. Stone. Even in this moment. Even in you standing there with all that rage and grief, thinking that killing me will somehow make it right." I shot him then. Didn't let him finish his twisted philosophy. He fell across his canvas, his blood mixing with the paint, creating one final piece of art that no one would ever see. I burned the mission down, letting the fire consume all his sick paintings. 8 down, 4 to go. Silent. Tom Waters hadn't spoken a word since 1866, the year he came home from the Civil War and found his family murdered by raiders. Whatever he saw that day broke something inside him, and he never spoke again. But he could still kill. He communicated with his guns, and they spoke loud and clear. The Undertaker, Josiah Grimm, had been an actual undertaker once, before he discovered he enjoyed putting people in coffins more than he enjoyed preparing them for burial. He was a tall, thin man who always dressed in black, and he had an obsession with death that went beyond even the artist's twisted aesthetic. He collected things from his victims: watches, rings, locks of hair. He kept them in a black bag he carried everywhere. I tracked them to Wyoming, to a town called Bitter Creek. They were working for a cattle baron, helping him drive out homesteaders who were trying to settle on what he claimed was his land. It was dirty work, but it was the kind of thing the Crimson Dozen excelled at. I found them at a line shack on the edge of the cattle baron's property. They'd been there a week, slowly terrorizing a family of homesteaders who lived nearby, killing their livestock, burning their crops, trying to scare them off. The family had 3 kids. That made it personal for me in a way that went beyond Redemption Valley. I approached in broad daylight this time. I was done sneaking around, done with careful planning. I was angry and I wanted them to see me coming. Silent Tom saw me first. He stood up from where he'd been sitting on the porch, his hand moving to his gun. The Undertaker stepped out of the shack behind him, that black bag in his hand. "Mr. Stone," the Undertaker said, his voice as dry as old bones. "We wondered when you'd arrive. You've been quite busy." Silent. Tom didn't say anything, of course. He just stared at me with empty eyes. "It ends here," I said. "Oh, I doubt that," the Undertaker replied. "Even if you kill us, Blackwood is still out there. And Doc Crane. They're the real monsters. We're just the hired help." "You were all there," I said. "You all pulled triggers. You all deserve what's coming." Silent Tom drew first. He was fast, maybe the fastest I'd faced yet. But fast doesn't matter when you've spent every waking moment preparing for this exact situation. We fired at the same moment. His bullet grazed my shoulder, Mine hit him in the heart. He fell without a sound, still silent even in death. The undertaker dropped his bag and raised his hands. "I can tell you where Blackwood is," he said quickly. "I can help you find him." "I don't need your help," I said. "I've been finding people my whole life. I shot him twice, once in the chest and once in the head. Made sure he was dead. Then I took his black bag and dumped it out. Dozens of trinkets fell out, each one representing someone he'd killed. I left them scattered in the dirt, let the wind take them. 10 down, 2 to go." Doc, Silas Crane was the worst of them all, except maybe for Blackwood himself. He'd been a surgeon during the Civil War, learned everything about the human body, about how much pain a person could endure before they broke. After the war, he couldn't stop. He kept practicing his skills, but instead of healing, he used his knowledge to hurt, to torture. The things I'd heard about what he'd done to people made my stomach turn. I found him in Missouri, in a big house on the outskirts of Kansas City. He'd set himself up as a respectable doctor, treating wealthy patients who didn't ask too many questions about his past. But at night, he had a basement where he kept the people who really interested him. People no one would miss, drifters, prostitutes, people like that. I broke into his house on a Thursday night. Found him in his basement operating room, as he called it. There was someone strapped to a table, still alive, but barely. I'll spare you the details. Some things are too dark to describe. When Crane saw me, he actually smiled. "Mr. Stone, the famous tracker, I've been hoping to meet you. You see, I have a theory about pain and grief, about how they change a man's body chemistry, his very essence. I'd love to study you, to see what—" I shot him in the knee, cut off his sick little speech. He screamed and fell, grabbing his shattered leg. "My wife screamed when you shot her," I said, walking closer. "My children screamed in that fire. I've heard their screams every night for 6 months. Now I'm going to hear yours." I won't tell you what I did to Doc Crane in that basement. I'm not proud of it, but I made sure he understood what pain really was. Made sure he suffered the way his victims suffered. When I finally ended it, when I finally put that bullet in his brain, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. I freed the person from the table, called the police, and left before they arrived. Let them find the good doctor's basement. Let them see what kind of monster had been living in their city. 11 down, 1 to go. Just Darius Blackwood left, the man who'd led them all, the man who'd given the order to burn Redemption Valley, the man who'd carved those names in my door and challenged me to come find him. I was going to take him up on that challenge. It took me another month to find Blackwood's trail. He'd gone to ground, hiding like the coward he was, now that all his gang was dead. But you can't hide from someone who's made you their only reason for living. I tracked him to Montana, to an old fort in the mountains that had been abandoned by the army years ago. He'd fortified it, stocked it with supplies. He was ready for a siege. I arrived at dawn when the sun was just starting to paint the peaks gold. I could see him on the walls, that black wolf hat unmistakable even at a distance. He was alone now, all his devils dead and buried. Just him and me and the ghosts of Redemption Valley. "Stone," he called out. "I knew you'd come. I've been waiting." I didn't answer, just started walking toward the fort. He fired warning shots, bullets kicking up dirt around me. I didn't stop, didn't even flinch. I'd been shot, stabbed, beaten and burned in the last 6 months. Pain was just another sensation now, meaningless. When I reached the gate, I found it barred. So I set fire to it, waited while it burned, while the smoke rose black against the morning sky. Blackwood kept yelling from the walls, saying things I didn't listen to. Words didn't matter anymore. The gate fell, and I walked through. Found him in the courtyard, 2 guns drawn, that wolf hat casting a shadow over his face. "You think this makes you better than me?" he shouted. "You've killed 11 men, you're just like us now." "No," I said, raising my gun. "I'm worse, because I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm doing it anyway." We drew together. 2 shots echoed off the mountain walls. His bullet went wide. His hand was shaking. Fear. He was finally afraid. My bullet didn't miss. It never did. Darius Blackwood fell, and with him fell the last of the Crimson Dozen. 12 names, 12 graves. I'd kept my promise. I buried him outside the fort, in a place where the wind would howl over his grave forever. Then I walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't feel anything. The revenge I'd sought for 6 months was complete, but it hadn't brought Sarah back. Hadn't brought Thomas or Emma or any of those children back. The people who said revenge wouldn't make me whole were right, but it had done one thing. It had made sure the Crimson Dozen would never hurt anyone again, and sometimes that has to be enough. My name is Ezekiel Stone. I was the tracker who never missed. And I'm telling you this story so you'll remember what happens to people who think they can burn innocent lives and get away with it. Justice might be blind, but I never was. If you enjoyed this story of vengeance and justice in the Old West, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with others who love classic Western tales. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Thank you for watching, and remember, some debts can only be paid in blood. Subscribe and share to support more Western stories.